There's a peculiar quiet in a neighborhood ruled by a homeowners association, like the stillness before a storm. It's a silence that masks the tensions simmering beneath the manicured lawns and perfectly aligned mailboxes. My neighborhood was no different. The streets were lined with trees, as uniform as soldiers, their leaves whispering secrets that even the wind wouldn't share. Among this order and precision, Karen reigned supreme. She was the self-appointed monarch of our HOA, the kind whose smile was sharper than a blade and whose eyes missed nothing. Her domain was a fortress of rules and regulations, all carefully documented in the tome that was our community guideline. She wielded it like a weapon. Karen's first move was subtle, a mere ripple on the surface of our quiet lives. She began her reign with the meticulous surveillance of every lawn, every hedge, every paint chip that dared to defy her standards. I watched from my porch as she conducted her daily inspections, clipboard in hand, like a hunter on the trail. Her satisfaction was evident in the tightness of her smile whenever she caught a violation. A single dandelion in an otherwise pristine sea of green. But I was unbothered. My house stood quietly at the end of the cul-de-sac, a place of solace and solitude. I liked it that way. I kept my grass just a shade longer, my hedges a little wild. Nature had its own order, after all, and I respected it. Karen, however, saw deviation. Her notes grew more frequent, her visits more pointed. Then came the letter, a $50, $1,000 violation bill for an array of infractions so trivial they were laughable: a blade of grass out of line, a fence post an inch too high, the wrong shade of white on my shutters. The amount was absurd, a number pulled from thin air to intimidate. But I wasn't rattled. I had a plan, one that had been quietly growing beneath the surface, much like my untamed garden. I had noticed the cul-de-sac had become a thoroughfare of sorts, a shortcut for those seeking to bypass the traffic lights of the main road. It was an unnoticed flow of cars until I paid attention, turning a blind eye into a ledger of tolls. Karen might have missed it, but I didn't. The irony was rich, almost comical. They drove past my house every day, contributing to the very nuisance they decried. I gathered my evidence with the patience of a craftsman. Every car, every license plate, meticulously recorded. It was a toll of my own making, and Karen was about to receive her bill. I mailed it with a sense of calm determination, knowing that the real storm was yet to come. The silence of the neighborhood remained, but it was charged now, electric with anticipation. I sat back on my porch, letting the wind carry whispers of what was to come. Karen's kingdom was a fragile thing, built on rules that could just as easily be turned against her. I was ready for the storm. I welcomed it, and so I waited. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across my kitchen table where the HOA's letter still lay, a harbinger of absurdity amidst the mundane comfort of my morning coffee. $50,000. The number was an indelible mark on my consciousness, a grotesque figure that seemed more at home in a bank heist movie than in the quiet suburbia I called home. This would not stand. In the days following the arrival of that fateful letter, the neighborhood seemed to buzz with an unusual energy, a whisper of something new and unsettling, like the faint rumble of an approaching storm. Neighbors, once friendly and unassuming, now cast furtive glances from behind hedges, their smiles more akin to grimaces. It was as if the violation notice had poisoned the very air we breathed. The HOA's rules had always been a tapestry of the mundane and the nonsensical, a list so varied in its absurdity that it bordered on satire: the color of our mailboxes, the height of our grass, the acceptable hues of house paint. These were their commandments, etched in stone and enforced with zeal. To some, they were the guardians of aesthetic harmony. To others, like me, they were the petty tyrants of our daily lives. But this $50,000 violation was a new peak of absurdity. My supposed infraction? A gate. installed at the behest of my insurance company. Deemed unauthorized by the board's inscrutable logic, it was a triumph of form over function, a decision driven by aesthetic purity, even as reason lay trampled underfoot. As the days wore on, the HOA's presence became more palpable. There were the familiar figures of the board members, patrolling with clipboards and self-importance, the enforcers of neighborhood normalcy. Their eyes lingered longer on my property, as if searching for further transgressions hidden among the roses. I felt their gaze like a physical weight, pressing down, trying to bend me to their will. It was in the quiet moments, the pauses between their judgments, that I plotted my response. If they wished to play this game, I would join, and I would not lose. Thus, the idea was born. A toll road, the single access road that led into our enclave, paved with my own funds and ingenuity, would become my battleground, legal. Perhaps not entirely, but in this war of absurdities, it felt fitting. The concept was simple: a modest fee for every vehicle, every foot that crossed the threshold into our hallowed neighborhood. After all, maintenance carried costs, and equity demanded recompense. With a sly nod to bureaucratic tomfoolery, I drafted the invoices, one for each occurrence, each marked with the precision of a practiced hand. The first invoices went out with little fanfare, neatly printed, professionally sealed, a touch of class in this escalating farce. I could imagine the confusion, the incredulous laughter that would greet these bills. But beneath the humor lay a challenge, a mirror held to the HOA's own ridiculousness. One morning, as I surveyed my domain from the porch, a board member approached. His expression caught between bewilderment and indignation. A single line broke the silence, carried on the breeze with all the weight of a guillotine's blade. This isn't how things work. But in my heart, I knew different. This was exactly how things worked in a world where logic and fairness had been shown the door. As the neighbor turned away, I felt a quiet satisfaction bloom within me. It was but the first act of rebellion, and the stage was set for the next act. In this absurd theater of the absurd, I would not be the fool to bow out. The clock's tick echoed in the stillness of my living room, a relentless metronome keeping time with my heartbeat. The letter, with its crisp edges and officious font, lay accusingly on my desk. $50,000, enough to buy a new car or fund a year's worth of college tuition. But instead, this was the sum the HOA demanded for repainting my house an unauthorized shade of blue, a color they themselves had approved 3 years prior. Staring out the window, I watched as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street, a neighbor briskly walking their dog, another trimming their hedge. And there, at the end of the cul-de-sac, stood Karen's house, her fortress of righteousness, her kingdom of arbitrary rules. She wielded the HOA bylaws like a sword, each clause a weapon in her arsenal against perceived disorder. The violation bill was the latest salvo in her crusade against me. I found it folded, neatly slipped under my door last week, like some covert mission document. The words were heavy with the weight of bureaucratic disdain, yet beneath that, I detected a flicker of triumph. Karen's whispered victory in the margins. But this was not a battle I intended to lose. I opened my laptop and began assembling my case. An arsenal of paperwork and emails, timestamps and approval letters. I became a detective in my own life, unearthing every scrap of evidence, each piece of correspondence, color swatches from the paint store, the email from the previous HOA board giving their blessing, and the receipts, proof that my blue was their blue. As I worked, the irony of the situation was not lost on me. Karen, in her zeal, had overlooked one crucial detail. The street outside our homes was private, maintained not by the city, but by our collective dues, and under the HOA's fine print. Any use of that road for non-residential purposes required a fee. All those cars, contractors, and delivery trucks that frequented Karen's endless home improvement projects, toll violations waiting to be tabulated. In the quiet of my study, I crafted my own letter, precise, measured, and with just a hint of sardonic flair. I itemized each vehicle, each entry, each exit. I calculated it all with the meticulous care of an accountant balancing the scales of justice, page after page. I drafted my toll bill to Karen's sanctum, a mirror to her own demands, totaling quite poetically $50,000. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in bruised purples and soft golds. I sealed the envelope and headed outside. The cool air, a balm to my frayed nerves. Karen's house loomed in the distance, a beacon of micromanagement. I slipped the letter into her mailbox, feeling the satisfying thud as it settled in alongside her glossy catalogs and community newsletters. I turned back home, a smile playing at the edges of my lips. It wasn't just about the money or the principle. It was about reclaiming a little piece of my peace. Karen might have started this war, but I intended to finish it not with anger or spite, but with the quiet power that comes from knowing your own truth. Inside, the clock ticked on, indifferent to our petty human dramas. As I sat back down at my desk, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. The tolls were due, and it was time for Karen to pay. The envelope lay in the center of my kitchen table like a forgotten relic, its pristine surface a stark contrast to the tumultuous swirl of emotions it incited. The HOA's latest missive had arrived. No doubt another reiteration of the $50 violation bill they'd so generously bestowed upon me in their quest for control over my small parcel of suburbia. But it was not the letter that commanded my attention today. That battle had begun its slow metamorphosis into something far more compelling. I had spent countless hours at the dining table, poring over legal documents, extracting every morsel of leverage I could glean from the labyrinthine language of property law. My mind had become a steel trap, every detail of the HOA bylaws memorized, every pitfall navigated with careful precision. Knowledge was power, and I wielded it like a sword forged in the fires of my indignation. Across the room, the morning sunlight filtered through the half-open blinds, casting stripes of light and shadow on the floor. It was a reminder of balance, of light countering darkness, of clarity amidst chaos. And clarity was what I had found in the toll road contract, languishing in its own corner of the table, its dry legalese transformed into an instrument of my own making. The HOA had encroached on my land in spirit, long before they had in deed. Their machinations had finally crossed the boundary, both literally and figuratively. They'd erected their precious security gate on a strip of land surveyors had confirmed belonged to me, a scandalous oversight, or perhaps a desperate gambit. Either way, it was my opening, and I intended to use it. I had drafted the toll bill meticulously, each clause a carefully aimed arrow, each stipulation a calculated strike. It was an invoice that demanded recompense for their trespass, charging them for every car that passed through the gate, for every oblivious commuter who unknowingly contributed to my private war chest. 50,000, 100,000. The numbers were as arbitrary as the fines they had levied against me. I had no doubt the HOA board would receive it with disbelief, perhaps even contempt. But that was the beauty of it. They could ignore it, mock it, dismiss it as the desperate act of a homeowner scorned. Yet, with each passing day, the meter would run, ticking away like a small, persistent clock in the back of their minds. Outside, the gentle hum of morning life began to stir in earnest. The gardener's distant lawnmower buzzed like a disgruntled wasp, a reminder of the world beyond my personal battlefield. I felt a surge of calm determination, an inner peace that comes only when one is utterly resolved. The path ahead was uncertain, strewn with the pitfalls of bureaucracy and the capriciousness of legal proceedings, yet I felt prepared, fortified by my quiet confidence and the unwavering certainty that I would have the last word. The board would learn that the cost of their hubris was more than monetary. It was a toll exacted on their ignorance, a lesson in the balance of power. Like the sun rising steadily over the horizon, the endgame approached with inevitable certainty. I would wait, watch, and listen, and when the time was right, I would strike with the quiet, powerful resolve that only the wronged can muster. The envelope remained unopened on the table as I turned away, my mind already leaping ahead, planning the next move in this calculated dance of retribution. Let the battle begin anew. I was ready. The day is gray and still, the kind of quiet that hangs heavy in the air, pregnant with anticipation. It feels like the entire neighborhood is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. The air is thick as I walk to the community hall, where the showdown is set to happen. Karen stands at the front, her aura a storm cloud of control and indignation. Her eyes, sharp and cold, survey the gathering crowd. She's poised for a victory speech, the kind you give when you believe the battle is already won before the first shot is fired. The community is here, eyes flickering between us. The tension is electric, and I can almost hear the collective thoughts. Who will reign supreme? The iron-fisted Karen or the quiet resilience of a single homeowner with an axe to grind and a plan in hand? I step forward, calm and centered. My gaze meets Karen's, and for a brief moment, her confidence flickers. A shadow of doubt passes across her face. She knows something's coming. She just doesn't know what. I have spent weeks gathering evidence, compiling every scrap of paper, every email, every instance of her overreach and arbitrary rules. The violation bill she sent me became my blueprint for dismantling her little kingdom. The toll bill I sent her, with its meticulous details of every unnecessary expense she forced on the community, was just the beginning. Each charge, each line item, a reminder of the financial burdens she imposed under the guise of community improvement. It was the perfect mirror, reflecting her excesses back at her. Karen sneers, trying to maintain her composure, but the whispers, the rustling of papers as my neighbors pass around the documents I've prepared, begin to unravel her facade. They read, they see, the scales start tipping. I think of her as a dragon sitting atop a hoard of ill-gotten gains, scorched earth tactics leaving only ashes behind, but even dragons can fall, and usually, it's from within their own ranks that the final blow is struck. The atmosphere shifts. People begin to murmur, voices rising in a crescendo. The tide is turning. Karen's reign, once unassailable, is crumbling like a castle made of sand, swept away by the gentle persistence of truth. A neighbor, one who's been silent until now, stands up. It's a small act, but it carries the weight of rebellion. The community listens, nods, the power of collective realization dawning. They see the cost, not just in dollars, but in the erosion of trust and community spirit. Karen's voice cracks, the confident veneer slipping. A single, powerful line escapes her in a futile attempt at defense, but it is too late. Her words are lost in the swell of resolve rising from the crowd. The community has found its voice, and it's louder and stronger than her tyranny. I stand back, letting them take the lead. This was never about me alone, but about us all reclaiming what was ours. The power of one, yes, but the power of many, undeniable. Together, the community dismantles the last of her defenses, a quiet revolution against the tyranny of a single HOA dictator. And so, the community restores itself. The halls echo not with orders and demands, but with conversations and laughter. The neighborhood breathes again, alive with the sound of possibility and renewed connections. Karen is sidelined, a footnote in the larger story of a community's resilience. Her shadow no longer looms large. Instead, it shrinks into the background, where it belongs. I walk away, the weight of the past few months lifting from my shoulders. The storm has passed, And in its wake, a new dawn emerges, bright and full of promise. The road ahead is clear and open, and as I take my first steps forward, I know I am not alone.